Alright, welcome back everybody to our Pokemon Sword and Shield ranked doubles highlights from our stream. And we're going to go ahead and tease that for the end of the video. But yep, we're leading with the same team as you can see. And then let's go ahead and jump right into the battles right here. So, he leads with a Dragapult and a Dusclops. And then I lead with Dragapult and Dusclops. And then we have reflecting shinies. But yeah, there we go. He has a Frisk. He reveals my items, which I was kind of worried about at the beginning because I thought he would know my strat. But yeah, so Dragapult goes in for the Dynamax, and I just decided to go for Broke here and just attack. I thought that he was going to Dynamax his Dragapult here, and so that's why I decided to Ally Switch to preserve mine. But then that's when I realized that he had a Focus Sash, so that means that it was a utility Dragapult, which means that he was going to set up something to counter my team, which was a Reflect, and then the Dusclops was going to use Nightshade. But yep, on the next turn I go ahead and use Shadow Sneak to counter it, and then I go for a Max Phantasm right here onto the Dusclops. Should tank it pretty well because of the fact that it has a Reflect Screen, which reduces physical damage in half. That, and he uses Trick Room to reverse the speed at which everything moves, which means that turn orders are flipped over for those that are not in the know. But yep, so he decides to Dynamax his Conkeldurr, which I thought was a bit unusual, but then I figured that he probably has Ice Punch on his Conkeldurr, which means that it would do a lot of damage. Yep, Dusclops will do the Pain Split on my Dusclops, and then Max Hailstorm. I believe he did that because he was thinking that I was going to go for an Ally Switch again to preserve my my Dragapult. But yep, I go ahead and use Max Wormwind onto the Dusclops to take it out, and then lower the attack of the Conkeldurr by 1 stage. And then he's going to send in Gastrodon. My Dynamax turns over, so I pretty much was convinced that I'm not going to be able to keep this Dusclops alive. But yeah, Gastrodon goes for the Earth Power to take out the Dusclops. And then Conkeldurr is going to go for the Max Hailstorm onto my Dragapult, and then down goes my leading 2. But yep, so my next answer is to bring in the last 2 on my team, which is a Corviknight and a Gastrodon. Yep, his Gastrodon goes for a Yawn, which kind of made me sweat a little bit because I was now working against the clock to keep the tide on to turn the tide towards my favor before my Gastrodon fell asleep. I go for a Bulk Up onto the Corviknight to raise its attack and defense, and then yep, Gastrodon's gonna get the leftovers right here and then now this is when things start turning around because the Reflect wears off. He goes for a Yawn onto my Corviknight, and then goes for a Drain Punch with his Conkeldurr to absorb some damage and to also do some chip damage on my Corviknight. I go for an Iron Head onto the Conkeldurr, and then let's see, this is this turn where Gastrodon falls asleep. Yep, Gastrodon's asleep, but the Trick Room's over, so now the turn order's reversed. So I go for the Iron Head onto Conkeldurr, and down goes the Conkeldurr after a critical hit as well. His Gastrodon goes for a Scald, possibly to take me out, but then he forgot that I have Storm Drain on my Gastrodon. So I fall asleep, but then I have a Lumberry, so I wake up, so that means that I got to keep going because I recovered my status. So I go for a Roost to heal up my Corviknight, and then go for another Roost again to heal it up. And then meanwhile, his Gastrodon's going to go for an Earth Power onto my other Gastrodon because he sees him as the threat when really the Corviknight's the threat. But yeah, so I go for a Body Press to pressure the Gastrodon. He has a Heal Berry, so he gets his health back from that attack. My Gastrodon finally wakes up, goes for the Earth Power. And then Corviknight's going to finish off here with a Body Press. Let's do it. Body Press, and we win. Yep, that's our first win in this set. So now we just go up against Whimsicott and Mimikyu. Incineroar and Morpeko is going to be my lead. Here I figured that I could go for a Fake Out with Morpeko onto the Whimsicott, and then use Flare Blitz to take out the Whimsicott before it could set up a Tailwind. But he anticipates that, so I go for the Fake Out anyway. Goodra soaks it. Mimikyu gets a Swords Dance, so now his attack's at +1. I go for the Flare Blitz onto Goodra, and then after that, I just go ahead and neutralize his attack again by using Parting Shot and switching out because I thought he was going to attack my Morpeko, which he does. There's a Play Rough onto Gastrodon instead. Sludge Bomb onto Incineroar, tank it like a champ, and then I go for a Snarl to weaken the special attack of the Goodra. And then I also hit the Mimikyu, which breaks the disguise right here. And that puts us in a nice little spot. But yeah, Mimikyu is going to use Phantom Force to disappear. And then I was going to use Parting Shot to pivot out, but as you can see, he wasn't there, so that was a wasted turn. And then I think I also used a Scald. But yeah, there's Phantom Force. Goodra goes for the Dragapult to take out my Gastrodon, which I was okay with because I really needed to pivot out anyway. I didn't bring in something safely, so for the Gastrodon to go down, I wasn't really concerned about it. So in comes Morpeko, and he comes in with the Hangry mode. In comes Dragapult, and now he can start unloading on them. But he pulls out his Mimikyu, and then I go for the Dynamax right here. I was anticipating that he was actually going to pull out the Mimikyu. So there's a Dynamax, and then now you get to see what happens next. Because I also knew he was going to use... I also had a very strong feeling that he was going to attack my Dragapult at some point. There's the Parting Shot onto Whimsicott. And we bring in the Incineroar. Yeah, the other thing is that I believe he used Fake Tears, but it didn't work because I have Clear Body on my Dragapult, so he wasted the turn with his Whimsicott. Here it is, Fake Tears. Dragapult resists it. I go for the Max Phantasm onto the Whimsicott, and then I believe I go for a Snarl. There's a Snarl with Incineroar to lower the special attack of the Primarina and to finish off the Whimsicott after breaking the Focus Sash. And because of that, -1 special attack, I was able to survive with the Dragapult and activate the weakness policy. Out comes Mimikyu, and then he's going to go for a Dynamax with the Mimikyu here, but since I'm +2, hilarity is about to ensue right here. But yeah, wait for it. There it is, Max Phantasm onto the Mimikyu, and down it goes after being Dynamaxed. Okay, so then of course the next move here would either be for Incineroar to Snarl or Parting Shot out, which he does. There's the pivot out, and then in comes the Morpeko. There we go. And Morpeko comes in. He's able to put some heavy pressure onto, there we go, onto the Primarina as soon as it comes in. There's the Fake Out to stall it out. And then I vanish. And then I switch over to the Happy Face mode, and there was a forfeit. Alright, so that's 2-0. Now we're up against our next opponent, a Leadee. He leads with Bisharp and Ninetales, Alolan. I actually thought I was going to lose this at the start just because he had such a commanding way to start the match. But yeah, he switches out Ninetales, brings in Conkeldurr. He probably anticipated that I was going to fake out the Ninetales to break the Focus Sash and prevent it from setting up a Roar Veil. But yep, here comes the Bisharp, and then I go for the Fake Out, uses Max Darkness to take out the Dusclops, and that's when I was just like, oh, I think I just lost here. Oh my god. But yep, down goes the Dusclops, and then in comes, wait for it, after we get all through this, in comes the Corviknight. But yep, I decide to Dynamax my Corviknight, and then pivot out with my Morpeko. Yep, it's going to be a Parting Shot out coming up after the Corviknight goes for... Yep, that's what I wanted to do. I was going to Parting Shot with the Morpeko, but then he shielded up, and then the Bisharp went for Max Rockfall, and I answer back with Max Knuckle. So Max Knuckle hits the Bisharp right here, takes out a huge chunk of its health, and then increases the attack of the Morpeko and my Corviknight by 1 stage. And then here's where I get to finally unleash the power of Morpeko. It's +1 on its attack, so I go for the Aura Wheel and take out the Bisharp. And then down goes the Bisharp, and then I get +1 on my speed as well. There's a Max Steel Spike onto the Conkeldurr, and wait for it, there's the Thunder Punch. Down goes the Conkeldurr. And now Morpeko is still up with +1 on attack and speed. And then he brings in Ninetales and Poltegeist. So here I believe I go for the Aura Wheel onto Poltergeist while it's in dark mode. And then down goes the Poltergeist. And then finally I go for... yeah, he's going to go for Aurora Veil. So I go for Max Knuckle just to increase my attack by another stage. That was a crit, so it overrode the Aurora Veil as well, with Morpeko having +2 on attack and +2 on speed. Morpeko is back into Happy Face mode, or Full Belly mode, and then they forfeit. So that's 3-0 now. And now next up, we're up against Sigilph and Leadee. There's Morpeko and Incineroar. He sets up the Psychic Terrain, but because his Sigilph is Flying type, I can go ahead and go with a Fake Out onto it, and then follow up with an Aura Wheel, I believe. But the problem is that Leadee's in here, so it's a Fake It onto Sigilph to lock it out for one turn. I go for an Aura Wheel to do some chip damage onto the Leadee, but then I can finish it off in the next turn with Aura Wheel in dark mode. So that's going to be a super effective attack onto Leadee. And then down goes that one. Then I followed up with a Snarl when I probably should have went for Flare Blitz onto the Sigilph. Yeah, looking at that in hindsight, it would have put me in a better spot than I already was. But anyway, he brings in Durant, and then I follow up with, let's see, what do I follow up with? I had a Parting Shot because I had +1 on the speed, so I just thought I might as well try to lower this Durant's attack to get some extra survivability. There's a Max Rockfall. He went for the Max Rockfall onto the Morpeko, and instead I bring Corviknight to soak up the attack. And then his Sigilph goes for the Hypnosis onto my Incineroar, which is unfortunate but also expected. I wasn't expecting that, but next time I see a Sigilph with Gravity, now I know what their plan is. Anyway, he goes for the Max Quake. I switch in Gastrodon to soak up the Max Quake. And then Sigilph goes for the Hypnosis onto my Corviknight. But since I have Lumberry on Corviknight, I'm going to override that and then go for an Iron Head to finish it off so that there's no more sleep spam being spread left and right. Okay, so the next step is that he's going to bring in Chandelure, and then this is going to, since I knew he was going to use Heat Wave, I just figured that I would bring in Incineroar to A, lower the attack stat of the Durant, and to soak up this Heat Wave with fire resisting fire. As far as damage is concerned, there's a Max Quake onto Gastrodon. Was that Gastrodon? Yep. And then down goes that one. And Chandelure gets some chip damage. Just in case it was using Focus Sash, I was able to break the Focus Sash with the Sandstorm damage. And then in comes Morpeko again. So now it's my last 2 versus his last. Actually, I have 3 left. He has 2 left. So, yep, I decide to Dynamax my Morpeko because I figured that he had the best chance of surviving. But yeah, and I also needed him to survive because he took out 2 Pokemon he can take out 2 Pokemon that I'm up against. There's the Max Lightning to protect against any further sleep, and then also to do some heavy damage onto the Chandelure. Incineroar survives, and then let's see. There's a Max Guard to protect, and then I believe I went for a ballsy play here because I was going to have Incineroar wake up, go for a Snarl to do some chip damage, and he thankfully does. But yeah, Snarl, Incineroar wakes up, does a Snarl, now goes Chandelure, and now all that's left is to take out the Durant. But yeah, I opt to switch out my Incineroar on this next turn because I just want to preserve him in case something miraculous happens. And then Durant goes for Stomping Tantrum onto him, does no damage, and then I have Morpeko come in and finish off with the Max Lightning. Yep, that's 4-0 with Morpeko being a baller in like 2 matches. But overall, I am in love with this team. I'm going to see if I can break into the top 1,000 as my next step. Alright, so now let's go on to the shiny highlight of the night. We have a Shedinja. This is the one Shedinja that I was able to get into, and it took like months trying to get into one, and the one that I finally get into is a shiny. Someone goes for an Ice Punch, but yeah, there we go. There's the Flare Blitz to take it out. I go for a Repeat Ball to catch it because it's the safest bet. Wait, do I have a shiny? Doesn't matter. There's Shake 1, 2, 3, 4, and caught. So yeah, there we go. We have Shedinja added to the shiny collection. And just to confirm, it has Wonder Guard and it has Jolly. I just need to put 2 bottle caps into attack and defense, and then that's it. But yeah, thanks again for watching, everybody. And don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe, and have a great night. Day, afternoon, evening, whichever it is, wherever part of the world in, or whatever time you're watching. Later.